In this video, I made my very first map and showed it off to a professional mapper. If you're new to mapping, you want to listen to this. I tried being funny and entertaining, but he actually genuinely showed me good tips and tricks for mapping. Hello.
Hello, mic check. Anyone hear me?
This is Astronic. He is a mapper well known for Juvenile, This Thing, and making maps for the OWC qualifiers. He was a beat map nominator back in 2020 and has become a well-respected mapper to this day.
My first map that I got ranked, Setsuna Plus, saying by Kano. It is a cut version, 1 minute 12 seconds, but alas, it's something that it's still ranked to this day. Other people might also see me in many tournaments, most notably, obviously, OWC, where I'll almost always be mapping NM2s for tournaments. Kisara no Koi. Alright, so how long you been mapping? I want to know now.
This is my very first map ever.
When did you start?
When did I start? I started like, I think it was like at the beginning of this month. I've definitely like, I've mapped some things before to just like test out the waters and editing. But this is like my very first like map I've actually, I guess, finished.
So out of 0 to 10, 10 being the best, how good is this quality, do you think, in your opinion?
For a very first map, I'd say like it's a 6 out of 10. I think it's
6 out of 10.
Pretty okay.
Yeah, I like that confidence. So would you consider yourself rankable already? Are we there yet?
I don't believe so. There's definitely some things, a lot of things needed to be worked on.
Okay, so now I'll tear into your map. Okay.
Okay. Tear into
So this beginning here, I mean, simple up the rhythms. He's going in. So what's with the angular anchored sliders, circular like flowing? If I just like.
He really meant it when he said he was gonna tear apart my map, but what he said really caught my attention this time.
And then you go into your little crazy jump section, which goes. I'm gonna segue that into what almost every beginner mapper fails to understand. Mapping is this concept called visual spacing. If you look between every circle, every relative close circle, you see this here. 4 and 1 are so close to each other, they're basically overlapping. But it's not consistent with the entire map because every jump here is just cluttered with each other. They just look cramped. I'm claustrophobic now. Every circle is just so close to each other. It's not consistent. You got overlap here, and then suddenly you got 8 to 10 are not overlapping. Not consistent. And it's apparent throughout the entire map. Because if I just go back somewhere, anywhere here, right? Okay, you got this 8 overlapping the slider here, but in terms of visual spacing, they shouldn't overlap because now they just looks. This looks ugly because this looks unintentional. It makes your map doesn't look not as polished. You could have easily just shifted over like a couple pixels, and it would have looked as fine. Not better, because now you have some sort of consistent spacing between every object. Unlike before, it doesn't. And this is very apparent throughout the entire Ki. Overlaps that look unintentional and sloppy. And then you got like, what is this, 5 pixels that separate these 8 and 10. And you got 2 pixels between 10 and 12. It's still not consistent. Same thing here, same thing here. If you just compare for our list maps, since you take inspiration off of those, mapper for our list, even though it's very Gunga spacing, but there's visually, each object is enough spacing that you could tell that, yeah, visually tell, oh yeah, these are separate objects. They don't look like they're overlapping and they look polished, right? 3 and 5, you got that little spacing each object. If it has to be close, 1 and 6, you see there's spacing. Yeah, sure, it has overlaps that may not look too appealing, but overall, in the whole point of the map, nothing is cluttered with each other. Nothing feels claustrophobic because everything's spaced out and away from each other. That gives each object like own atmosphere. There's a difference between like slightly overlap like this versus this. Which one looks cleaner? The 1 or 2? Obviously, most people will say, well, it still looks cleaner than having this slight overlap, which looks unpolished. And they just keep looking at this entire map.
This really caught my attention because visual spacing was something that wasn't really talked about when I watched Pishy Fast videos.
My favorite example I like to tell mappers, I'm like, what is visual spacing, right? I like to go to AK-74, very Chinese mapper, tech mapper, but his patterns are very complex, but he makes everything look pretty and nice in a way that would be otherwise hard for most mappers to do. if you look between every object, there's literally small spaces between every object in a way that separates every object to make it clean, nice, which is the basis for visual spacing. Obviously, the most common example you could say, oh, look at Monstrata. Every circle is hexagrid patterning, and literally you could visibly see every circle that is just different from each other. Like, say every object like repels another sense. And for like these overlaps, they look, at least, yeah, they look ugly, but in a whole grand thing, of things, this is one pattern. Because this is one pattern, it works fine. They need to be separated in a way, for you at least, because each mapper handles their mapping visual spacing differently than every other mapper, right? So you got to figure out what's your way to make visually consistent. And this is like one of the things that every new mapper begins to struggle with, because it's not taught very well by anyone. Yeah, there are Fishy Fats videos that new mappers always go to because they are good videos to set a basis for new mappers, but they don't obviously tell the whole story, and obviously it's hard to do when you, because mapping is very hands-on. You can't learn by just watching videos. You have to do it yourself, get feedback. And well, obviously one of the better ways is also study maps by mappers that you like. That's what every mapper will tell you if you want to learn how to map. Study maps by mappers you like, study how they do their patterns and whatever. Use them in your own style, and then once you've learned enough, you will eventually develop your own sense of style. So using that idea of like, okay, let's have visual spacing, consistent visual spacing. That means, all right, every relative object shouldn't be overlapping or close to overlapping, right? Yeah, it's very hard concept to understand for most mappers. Every ranked map has to follow it in some way, sense or like, let's go to this map. Now, that being said, of what visual spacing is, you could tell every ranked map uses it. Now, if you just go into the editor and just look at it yourself, nothing looks like it's unintentionally overlapped. Everything has its own space in a way.
So when is it like a good time to overlap things, and when is it?
Well, of course, that is for overlapping. That is entirely up to you, right? It's not like you have to be like Monstrata, have every object distant away, right? Yeah, just not clutter. You can overlap all you want. You shouldn't try to strive for these overlaps that look just horrendous. Like 11, 13, and 6 overall just doesn't look appealing. No, it's okay to not follow it sometime and have patterns that look like this once in a while. When your entire map just looks like this the entire way, it just does. That's where you gotta start improving on your visual spacing. Like even Zotarks, well, has to use it because that's how every map should be, right? But let's go for his Christmas set of 2022, right? And you can see that, even Zotarks, unsurprisingly, uses visual spacing because you kind of have to make a visually appealing map. Not even just for, looks so nice to play, comfortable, but just to make maps not cluttered.
So when I started mapping, I did not expect how much astronic had to say. My map has a lot of flaws, but regardless, nobody has passed the map to this day. That's why I'm having a raffle for supporter for the people who passed the map. Just send your screenshot in my Discord and you'll be entered. My most recent map survived. It's supposed to be like a Gunga map, a map like our list. I've had several people tell me this is over space and everything, but I think it's done well enough that it should be fine. But whatever, time will tell, right? But this is where my most recent map is. And this is where I am now. I'm trying to map more, but college, life gets in the way, so. Yeah. Oh my god, this looks really fun to play. I'm not gonna even lie. Okay, hit the bell, subscribe. Oh hell yeah. Let's go. Also, please rank survive. That map is a banger.